So this week we're going to be kind of working on making multiple material. Well, I don't want to say multiple materials. That's kind of that we're not actually doing that, but we're going to have a complex material. I think they even call it complex shader, where we're almost doing multiple materials into a onto a single object, and we're going to use masking in order to allow it to do that. And I think some people were trying to start to do this last week. So this week you're going to get a lot of experience working with this, where you have basically different materials and different parts of your model. So we're just going to kind of start off real simple, where we have this tank. It's so small, hard to navigate to it. Is there like a slow move? Like hold like Alt or something and it slowly moves you in? Oops, not that.
That camera icon in the top right of the viewport, that changes your base camera speed. But
Oh,
okay. I had to press F to focus on the camera or on the tank because it was throwing my camera around.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you. Because it's such a small thing. Scroll wheel. Okay, thanks. So we kind of we're going to start first real basic, where we're just going to put kind of like that very first kind of base material on 3 different parts of our model. So we're going to have like a base color for like the majority of the tank. We're going to have a real tread material for like those treads. And we're going to have a metal material for like the cannon and stuff like that. And the nice thing about this model is if we kind of dig into it, it has a really nice, if I find it, it has a really nice unwrap on it, which is, we harp on unwraps a lot because having a nice unwrap can make other processes a lot easier. So what they did for this, and this is like kind of like a legitimate way to do things, is they created a mask for this. And if you're not comfortable working in this RBG mask, you could always do this in a way where you're just importing individual black and white images. So you could have like a black and white image where it's just like the treads, a black and white image where it's the cannon, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a simpler way to do that. So if you're more comfortable, like if you're working on your own project and you want to make your own mask, you can mask things out by just importing in a bunch of black and white, where black is the texture will not go there, and white is the texture will go there. What they have instead is they have this image right here, where it's R, G, and B, because we can easily pull just the R channel, the G channel, and the B channel in our shaders and utilize them as masks. So, 3 masks kind of stuck into one, or if you're not super comfortable on your own, you can always just do black and white. And again, it would be black and white, not gray. Don't have grayscale in there, because then you're going to have like some halfways in between there, and you don't really want that for the technique that we're doing. So let's construct our first one, which I'm going to make sure I'm naming it correctly based on the assignment, which is going to be M Toy Tank. And make sure you're making it in your directory. If you want to make a subfolder in here for just materials, that's fine. If not, you can just make it right in here. We're going to make a material M for Toy Tank. And let's make sure we're applying it to our object in the scene. Oops, that's the wrong slot, sorry. Just so that as we make adjustments, we'll be able to come back and take a look at it. Once you're good with that, we can double click our material and we can start the process. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to make kind of 3 sub materials, but we're just going to do base colors. So we're going to need 3 colors. We'll end up needing eventually 3 roughnesses and 3 metallics. So let's kind of work first on making our 3 base colors. And we're going to do this kind of over here. Is this a, sorry, hold on. Is this a, can I do it at about this level? Is this too small for people? We're going to be getting a lot of nodes, so will this work?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, okay.
That's good.
So we need 3 of those constant 3s. So I'm just going to hold the 3 key. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click here. And I'm going to click over here. I kind of like know the end of what this is going to look like. So I'm kind of trying to make sure I'm giving myself enough room for things. This is going to be the color of our tank treads. This is going to be the color of the body. And this is going to be the color of the cannon. So if you want to kind of make changes to these, so the tank treads, I'm going to do kind of like a dark gray, like something like that. For the body, I'm going to do kind of like a wood-ish color. Like a browny, kind of khaki. A little bit more this way, a little bit darker. Almost kind of like an unfinished wood. And then since this is going to be the metallic like cannon, it's just going to be like a light gray. Down a little bit. And we have that. So how do we now get these so that this is on the tread, this is on the body, this is on the cannon? We are going to use that colorful RGB image that they provided with us as our mask. So I'm going to bring that in first. I'm going to hold T and click, make a texture sample. And the texture sample I'm going to choose is that image, which is called T-Tank Masks. It's pretty easy to find because it's very bright. And we're going to work with the lerp node to do this. And I kind of want to do this a little bit step by step so that you can kind of see what happens. So I'm going to do my best to kind of show this so we can go kind of one and the other. So to make a lerp node, the easiest way I've found is to hold the L key and click. So we're going to first feed this gray one into A. And then we're going to feed that into base color. So if we apply, do our apply and save, and we take a look at our tank, it turns into that single color. Let me make it a little bit darker. I have some concerns. Oh, well, we'll keep going. I'm sure it'll fix itself in the next step. We then want to feed our body color into B. Let's see if it changes color on us. There it goes. I think it's just a coloring of the light we're starting to get. And what happened was that this color overrode this color. And then the way that we can control this is through this alpha. And this means our mask, where we can tell it to use one of these channels as its mask. So for instance, if we feed that red channel, and so anywhere on this image is in the red channel that's red is going to be white in the red channel, and anywhere that's not is going to be black because it's all or nothing for these since they're red, green, and blue. We're going to feed this red channel into the alpha. We're going to And do you see how now we get the khaki color on the body and we're getting that grayish color on the treads? And the way that this works is you have your A, you have your B. If you have your mask in, anywhere on here that's white is going to be B. Anywhere that's black is going to be A. So we're getting everything. So we're getting the body, but we're getting the treads and we're getting the gun. So we're going to have to do another mask to mask out where the gun is opposed to the treads, because we're getting both. So I think sometimes that might be the hard one to remember is, how does a lerp work? This goes down first. This goes on top of it. Whatever is white in your alpha keeps this top one, and whatever is black is going to cut out that B away, and you're going to see the A underneath. Does that make sense? For the moment. Okay, yes. You're going to get a lot of practice working with this node today, because a lot of what you're doing is just practicing with lerps to blend things together. So in essence, we're making a base color material that's this one, a base color material that's this one, and then a base color material that's this one. Okay, so let's do another lerp for our metallic, like that gun. So we're going to hold down L and click. Is there a way to just click on those things and insert one? Probably not. It was too complicated. So I'm going to feed this into A. So that goes down first, and this will ultimately go into our base color. So this goes down first. This one is going to go down second. And in order to cut out stuff, we want to have the channel in here that's meant to be the metallic stuff. And the blue is all of our metallic stuff. So we're going to say, keep everything that's white, cut away everything that's black. And if we take a look at this now, at this. It does have a couple other like little metallic things. But so it's not just the cannon, but basically the cannon, we're going to call it that. So we have we could probably clean this up a little bit better, just for the sake of space. Because now that we have our base color, we need to do our metallic, and we need to do our roughness. And the way that the book shows you to do it is just to do some copying and pasting. I'm not going to copy paste all the nodes. I'm just going to grab the lerps and the texture samples, hit Control-C and Control-V. Move it down here, and we'll do another one. I don't know why they have you copy that texture sample rather than feed it into all the other ones. That's what I would do personally myself. But just to stay consistent to the book, they do have you copy those to go with these. So these are going to be our metals first, since metal comes next. And we're going to need a metal for the treads, the body, and the cannon. And we do the constant 3 for color. Which constant do we do to set metallicness? Which one do we use? Does anyone remember? Just the one, yeah, because it's just one value. It's just a grayscale image, and we're just going to do all, a set value for those for this one. So if we hold down the 1 key, we can easily click for our. This will be our treads. This will be our body, and then I'm going to click over here for the cannon. So this is easy. The body's not metallic. The treads aren't metallic. The only thing that is metallic is the cannon one. I'm just going to set that to 1. And then we just have to kind of feed these all through again. So body, I'm sorry, treads, body, it blends together, but you know, it's ultimately 0, but this might come into play later on. That's also why we're doing this. And then we'll feed this into here. And then this can all be fed into metallic. Let's take a look. I know this seems funny, but trust me, when we get to like the next step, it's going to be kind of cool that we have control over this. We're ultimately going to make something really, really neat. Ah, see, that lighting is messing it up. What is going on today? The funny thing is I have a completely different version of this I was working in that I did the same way. And it didn't have any lighting issues. Here, I'll pull this. I'm going to poke at this lighting for a second, but you can kind of keep working on that. I know it was going a little bit fast. It's a good kind of stopping point. I'm going to mess with my lighting over here. The other thing that you do need to do to kind of take one more step further is going to be just to set up, the roughness has the same constants that we're going to have to make these kind down here. Oops. So I'm going to make one for the roughness. That into roughness. Let's see, the treads probably should be pretty rough. Maybe like since it's maybe like a 0.75. I'll make the body a 0.5, and I'll make, I don't want it to be too chromy, so maybe like a 0.2 for the cannon. Oh wait, it's working now. Look at that. Just because I put that skylight in there. Unreal's just messing with me today. Okay, so this is the first thing you have to do. I'm going to try to organize it a little bit better. The book kind of shows you how to do like the thing. Let me see if I can do that here. Where so I'm going to, so I'll show you how to do this. Base color. Select the nodes that you want to have included in one of those things. So I'm just going to select all those. I'm going to hit C on the keyboard. This is metallic. Oops, I included stuff I shouldn't have. Sorry about that. You should try to keep it a little bit organized, at least since I have to look at it. If I can't figure something out, you're not going to get credit for it. I'm going to pause for a second soon so everyone can catch up. And I'm going to leave this up on the screen. Were there any questions so far? I can tell you that this kind of method is really efficient as far as like rendering goes, that if you're trying to make a really efficient game, like this could be an approach to it. Do you want me to leave it up like this? How many people need a little bit of time? Does anyone need time to get kind of caught up, or is everyone pretty good? Hunter's good. 'Cause I'm willing to wait. Okay, you're fine. Okay, yeah, I need to know one way or the other. If you're good, please just let me know. So I'm not just assuming no one's listening to me. So we're going to get into that next. Logan, we're going to be talking about that.
Okay, thank you.
That's like part 2. But we needed to kind of get this done first. All right, I'm hearing that everybody is good, and I kind of want to do the next step, and then we can take like a quick break, just because it kind of ties really well together. Because we're done with this, like we're done with this material at this point. This is, if you want to tweak some stuff, that's good, but we are done with this part, and we're going to move on to creating an instance material, which is really fun. So ultimately, a lot of the way that this material works is pretty simple. It's other than that one mask, it's all just numbers. We're changing numbers for the color, we're changing numbers for the roughness. The mask is kind of controlling where it's going. But like, let's say that you needed, you were going to give this to an artist. This is why this is a kind of like a really good tech arty kind of thing. Like you had created this material for this object, and the artist is supposed to kind of go in and maybe tweak it a little bit, but they're like, oh no, I don't want to go into that node system. That's too complicated for me. I'm going to mess something up. Or the other way to think about this is, what if you have a bunch of tanks? What if you have this tank, and this is the base tank in your game. And then when you level up, you get, the model is the same, but the coloring is different. Or maybe like this is like the normal magic tank, and then you have a fire magic tank and an ice magic tank. And it's the same model, but they have color variations on there. You really don't want to have to go in and, tweak stuff like inside of here. So this is where doing a material instance can be really handy. One, it can be easier possibly for artists to work with. So you could set this up for them, and then you can expose certain parameters for them to tweak to get the looks you need. Two, it's an easy way to make multiple instances of an object with different materials on it with your colors. So what we're going to do is we are going to, let's see, first we're going to save. We're going to make sure that we've saved our project. That's always a good thing to do. What's the first step? Sorry. We are going to parameterize our items in here. And this will allow us to expose basically variables. Like if you kind of think of it in a programming way, we're making almost, if you want to kind of tie it back to programming, we're almost making things from private variables to public variables, because these constants are more or less, we can think of them as a float variable for all of 3 float variables, 3 float variables, and 3 vector 3 variables, if you want to tie it back to programming. So the first thing we need to do is we need to expose them, aka make them public, so that the user will be able to manipulate them. So I am going to select these 3. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say convert to parameter. And it changes them to param. And the key though is you do want to make sure that you're naming these something so that your user will understand what these are. Like param, param1, param2, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to anybody. So param2 is the base color for the cannon. This is the base color for the body. This is the base color for the, what do we call them? Oh, I'm trying to make sure I follow along with the book. Tire. They call them the tire, so we'll call that tire 2. So we're parameterize these. The other things we want to be able to manipulate would be that these metallic constants and the roughness, because those are things we'd want to possibly tweak. So I'm going to select these. You can do them one at a time. It's kind of up to you. Right click, convert to parameter, and then we just need to rename them again. So this is metal cannon. This one was body, I'm sorry, metal body. And this one is metal. If you did tire metal, body metal, cannon metal, that's fine, as long as you're kind of keeping them consistent. So I started with the map, the texture type first, and then the object. If you did object texture type, that's fine. Don't bother changing it. As long as through all 3, it stays the same. Don't like mix it up between them. Same thing down here. Convert to parameter. This is rough cannon. Rough body. All right. Okay, so let's keep going on. We're almost done with this part, and this is going to be the part that ends up being really cool, I promise. If you don't think it's cool, then maybe shaders aren't for you. We're going to make an instance now of this. So you can almost think of this as like the parent material, that this we designed it, it's the parent material, that's where it kind of everything's going to start from. And now we can make an instance of it where we'll be able to make adjustments to it, but that parent material will stay the same. So we're going to right click, shoot, hold on. I'm sorry, we're going to right click on that material, and we're going to, all the way at the top it says create material instance. That's what we're going to do. So we set it up, we're going to create a material instance. We're going to name this mi underscore toy tank. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this in the scene. No. There we go. So we can see what they look like. And this duplicate, I'm going to put that material instance on. Open that. Yep, so that one has the original. This one has the instance of it. And once we make the instance, what we can do is we can double click it. And notice that we don't get the same kind of material editor. We just get the sphere. That I don't really like the sphere. Let's change it to, can we change it? Oh, down here. That's fine. We'll just do it on the plane. Sometimes the plane, at least for this, since it's an unwrap, it works a little bit better. Look over here though, the parameter groups, metal body, metal cannon, metal tire, rough body, rough cannon, rough tire, base body color, base color cannon, base color tire, blah. So we can come in here and we can completely, and you need to check these on for them to work, to tell what you want to manipulate. So we can make a whole new version of this. So again, trying to follow what the book has just so it kind of stays consistent. We'll do a pinky body. We'll do like a teal gun. We're going to make a vaporwave tank. Just like a darker tread. Kind of in the yellow, really dark. Now we'll lighten it up a little bit. We can then make that body, maybe the body is actually is metallic. And we'll make the body be not so rough. And then we're going to save and go back. And look at our awesome version 2 of the tank. And the nice thing about it is we didn't have to change our original. If you were an yeah, as I said, it's a vaporwave tank. If you're an artist and you just work with, like, this is going to be much easier to work with as an artist. Like you're tasked to make 10 different iterations of this object. This would be significantly easier to work with. It's very resource light. It's not crazy. It's not crazy intense. We're not going into this. Again, you shouldn't be scared of this, but artists might be scared of it. So you might have to set it up for them. The other thing I do want to point out is, as of right now, this isn't very elegant. We can make this a little bit more elegant, the way that these parameters are set up. And the way that we do that is we're going to go back to our parent material. And we are going to come back and I'm going to select this base color tire first. Underneath the details panel, do you see how underneath this material expression, we have the ability to give it a group? Right now it's set to none. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and change it from none to tire. I'm then going to change the body from material expression group to body. And I'm going to change the Canon group to Canon. I'm going to go through and set all my parameters up this way. And since I made them by typing it in, I can use the drop down now. So tire, body, Canon. Tire, body, Canon. Did you make it metallic? I might have to take a look at that. My metallic was acting up until like I poked at it and let it sit for a little bit, and then suddenly it started being metallic. Like it's like might be a lighting issue. Yeah, that's what happened. It just started working. By setting that group, this is the last thing I wanted to show you before taking a quick break. Look at it now. Body, Canon, tires. So rather than just like that mismatch of things, we can now like this would be so much easier to work with than just a random assortment of things. Because again, if you want to be a tech artist, your job is to make sure that you're helping your fellow developers, not hindering your fellow developers. So we want to make something that is easy to use. Neat, huh? I think it's neat. I think it's fun. So let's keep going. So we got the first two done that you need to have done for the demo. Again, we're going to I am skipping some stuff, and if you do, I would recommend if you're interested in these topics to go back and do the stuff I'm skipping over. But for the sake of time, we can't do the whole book. So the next part we're going to work on is creating a textured version of the tank. And we're going to utilize just some basic textures. And this is another way that you could possibly texture something. Rather than doing like an unwrap and making a painted material where you take it into Painter and you do all this stuff. If it's simple enough, we can just create different textured materials and mask out the parts that we don't need. Especially since we do have some, we're just going to utilize some of the, it's from the content collection, but I kind of pulled out what we needed. Oops, yes. I pulled out what we needed so that we weren't importing in the whole content collection. So we do want to start off with, let me save everything. We do want to start off with our M-Toy tank, since we do have like that nice base already with like the lerping and the masking is already figured out. All we would need to do is create our texture materials for all the 3 different areas. So I'm going to right click on this one on my M-Toy tank. I'm going to duplicate it and call it M-Toy tank _ textured. Let's go ahead and let's duplicate our tank here so that we can put that textured material on it, so we can see a difference as we're working. And then we are going to open this up. Okay, so the first thing we're going to work with, and it's mostly going to be a lot of stuff up here first, is we're going to change out this base color body. So it's not just this solid color. Instead, we're going to use a texture for here. So I'm just going to delete this. And I'm going to hold the T key and click to make a texture sample node. And the texture sample I'm going to use is going to be the T wood pine. So T _ wood pine, the D, this one right here. And if you did want to just go ahead and hook that RGB up into the B, and we can see what it looks like. And it's okay. I really don't like the way that the wood grain is going. I don't really like the way the wood grain is going. It's kind of weird looking. The person who did model this did unwrap it in a certain way to kind of take wood grain flow into account, but it's currently going the wrong way. So one thing we do probably want to change is we are going to want to change the rotation of this. And we want to make sure that the wood grain isn't so big, because look how big that wood grain is. We could make it smaller, and if we wanted to. Let's see. So what we're going to do is first, let's just rotate it and see what we get. So kind of remember what it looks like right now. I'm going to first pull off of here. And I'm going to make a custom rotator node. And then off of here, we're going to do a texture coordinate. So first is the texture coordinate. It feeds into the custom rotator, feeds into the texture sample. I'm going to change the texture coordinate first so we can see what it does. Gracie, you unmuted for a second. Jack, you're just going to have to watch and try to boot up. It is being recorded, so you can catch up later if you need to. Okay. So texture cord, what we can do here, if you haven't played around with this material, is that we can mess with basically the tiling of the UVs on here. So by default, it is like a 1-to-1 kind of a thing. But let's change the UV tiling to 3 and 3. And save. Do it. I guess it's doing it. It's hard to tell. Let me try doing it something dramatic. Yeah, it is. Like if I really make it weird, like I did a 10 and a 3, and it really kind of stretched it kind of funny. There you can see the tiling a lot better. Yeah, so 3 and 3. This will just the higher the number, the smaller your texture is going to appear. So 3 and 3 tends to work pretty well for this particular one, where it looks pretty scaled to the model. The next thing is going to be to rotate that, and we're going to do that with this. We just have to feed in a constant into this rotation angle. And this is a 0-to-1. So 0 is no rotation, and 1 is a full 360 rotation. And we just need to rotate it 90 degrees. And so if we need to translate 90 degrees into a decimal, it's just going to be a rotation of 0.25. So you can see what it looks like. We apply and save it. And it just looks a little bit better how it's kind of flowing this way over it. It's on this thing here nicer too. So we didn't need to open up our object in like, we didn't need to go back to Maya, open it up and mess with the UVs and then re-export it. We were able to manipulate our texture to fit nicer on our object. So the next step is going to be to make a little bit nicer of a rubber. Obviously, the wood one's pretty easy because we can just find a wood grain, slap it on. But the rubber might just need a little bit more finessing with its color, because right now the color is just this kind of dark gray. We just need to kind of vary up that gray, kind of similar to how you might do it in Painter. So what we're going to do, move this. Down here. We're going to work with the gray here. So we're going to kind of keep this as our main gray. And what we want to do is we want to make a just a slightly darker version of that gray, and we're going to end up lerping them together. So we're going to first make a multiply node. And we'll feed this into here. And then we're going to set this B constant to about a 0.5, I believe, is what we're supposed to set it to. Yes. So it's going to make a slightly darker version then. The B 0.5, feeding it into here. It's just going to make a slightly darker version of that gray. We're then going to create a lerp. Holding L and clicking. And we're going to feed this into the slot A and this into slot B. Then this can take this is its place. So we got our lighter version, our darker version. We just need to now mask them. Let's see if I can save this. And it shouldn't be too big of a change because it just needs to be a slight variation. And then we're just going to create a mask for it to look nice. And we're going to do this by using one of the images that does come with the collection. So we're going to add a new texture. So click for texture sample. Which texture sample is going to be the, what is it? Smoke tiled. This is like a nice noisy one. We don't want to do it this big. We do want to kind of make it smaller, like a smaller smoke, which means that we do need to do a texture, one of those texture coordinates on it like this, so that we can make it tile a bunch of times. So I'm going to pull off of here and do a texture coordinate. We don't need to rotate it. That's why we're not doing this one. We just need to make it tile. And I'm probably going to do it about a 3. Always seems to take forever sometimes for these things to update. And what's coming out is okay, but we're going to probably want to bump that contrast. So it's kind of going to be similar to in Photoshop when you one of those brightness contrasts where you want the blacks to really pop and you want the whites to get brighter, just so that there's a little, I hate to use the word contrast, but we want more contrast in there. And we're going to do that with it's called a cheap contrast node. And it's an alpha. We're up here, an alpha. So ultimately, we need to be working in a grayscale. So we're just going to use the R channel off of that for the in, because it'll work. There it goes. It'll work good enough. And then we just need to give it a constant for the cheap contrast. Which we're going to set to 1. Oops, sorry, I didn't do that. So we're taking that kind of grayscale-ish smoke, but technically it is RGBA. We're going to make it tile a bunch of times to make it smaller. We're going to just take that R channel and feed it into a cheap contrast, which is basically like a contrast filter. With a constant of 1 into that means we're going to really make it super contrasty. We then want to use this. Let me change it to here so you can see it better when I put it on. We're going to use this as our alpha. And we're getting a variation now in here. Do you see how we have our lighter? We have our darker version, and we're using this as a mask to say which one is one or the other. Maybe it's a little bit much. We could always, come in here and manipulate that. What if we do a 0.3? I'm sorry, 0.5 on that cheap contrast? It'll kind of blur it, make it not so strong. You can always try tiling it smaller to see if you like the look better. There's a lot of ways that you can manipulate this to see if you like it more or less. Let's see. I only have one more step to do in this section, and that's going to be to mess with the canon, and that's going to be with the roughness. Did anybody have any questions about this? I don't want to wait too much longer because I want to try to make sure I get through it, and we can always pick it up. Since I'm recording it, we can also always pick it up next class. How's everyone doing?
Doing good.
Okay, so okay, let's work with the roughness on that cannon, and it's going to be a very similar process to what we were doing up here, where we're going to want to, here's the roughness cannon down here. Rather than just this single parameter, we're going to want to give it some variation. So I'm actually just going to delete this. And instead, I'm going to add 2 constants. And just for the sake of being able to see the variation a lot, let's open this up a little bit. I'm going to keep one at 0, but set the other one to 1. So we're going to, if you haven't figured it out, use a mask. Use a lerp to mask between these 2 values. So some areas will be super rough, some areas will be super shiny. So let's first add that lerp, holding down L and clicking. We'll feed in one, we'll feed in the other, and then we can feed this back up into this one. So it's super shiny right now, just because it is that one. I'm sorry, it's super rough right now because it is that one. That's why it's not like chromy anymore. So let's create a nice alpha for this. And what we're going to do is we are going to use another texture. So holding down T and clicking. And this is another kind of like noise texture that comes with Unreal. And it's called the, what is it? The macro variation. It's just kind of like a very noisy sort of thing. So if we use this now, and I'm just going to pull out that red channel and feed it into the alpha. We have that variation now of masking, fully metallic to 100% roughness. I only did the 1 and the 0 so you could really see the difference. You probably want to come in and tweak these, maybe rather than 0, maybe like a 0.25. And then rather than 1, maybe try like a 0.5. And so it's almost looking like foil. Like if you think of like the foil you might see on like a candy or something like that. You could always, if you wanted to, do the whole process. If you weren't quite satisfied, you could do the texture coordinate on it. You could even do that whole cheap contrast if you needed to manipulate it some more, if it wasn't quite working the way that you wanted to. But ultimately, hey, maybe it could be a chocolate cannon. I guess I'm having that issue. I gotta just maybe wait for it. Who knows how long. But it's kind of neat that we were able to build this all up with just a couple of textures, and it has the variation on it. Save it. Oh, I wish it would stop doing this. But We only had one more to do for the demo. So you should, and I'm going to give still everyone a few moments to get caught up. You should be able to switch between the two cameras. Camera 1 to kind of show you an up close of the surface, as well as camera 2 once you get that in. And please make sure you are saving it into the correct folder. So what we're going to accomplish with this is that if you look at camera 2, we have this tile. It's a tileable texture, but it has a very noticeable kind of tile to that, and you can see like almost like the wave. It almost looks like waves because like there's a lot of detail here. There's not so much detail here, and when you put it over a large surface, it really kind of breaks that illusion that this might be a real place, because you wouldn't have that kind of that much like repetitiveness in something like concrete, because concrete, even though it's man-made, does tend to have a little bit more of an organic kind of surface to it, where we wouldn't have that repetition. So we're going to use, we're going to create a new material so that we can kind of fix that a little bit and kind of play around with doing some more blending and everything. So let's see. Make sure this. So even though it wants you to, if you follow the directions, it wants you to open up an already created texture. Since we do need to change these into our folders, we can find that. Let's see. How do you get out of the camera view?
Here below perspective, you see where it's orange. You click the opposite one. Like below perspective, get out of the menu.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see.
That thing there.
Thank you.
All right.
So we can, if we selected it, it has this already M semi-procedural material on it. But we want to we're going to do a save as and save a copy into our folder. And we can just call it M semi-procedural concrete. We can take off that start on there. And I'm going to go ahead and also apply that to the surface. Just because we're going to be making changes with it, you do need to make sure that, you know, again, if we're making changes to things, it needs to be done to, it needs to be saved into this folder. So I'm going to quickly swap those out. I'm going to go back in. So this was a pretty basic texture where it just has this texture sample, and we're using this texture coordinate to tile it 20 times onto the surface. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to start to add some more tileable textures, and then we're going to start blending them together so that we can kind of hide that tiledness of it. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to add a texture sample. I'm just going to hold down T and click. And the texture sample we want is the T-Rock Marble Polish D, which you should be able to, you should find it, T-Rock Marble Polish D. And it just has a, you can look at it real quick. Is it open? There we go. It's just this kind of a pattern, so we can kind of use this and blend it with our concrete. Even though it's technically marble, that's fine. As long as we blend it well, it still will look like concrete. Okay, so let's see. The first thing we're going to do is create a texture coordinate node so that we can tile this 20 times as well. And we can just do that by pulling this off and start typing texture coordinate. And we're going to change this to 20 and 20. So give me 1 second while you're looking at that. I'm going to plug this laptop in. I think Unreal's going to drain it pretty fast. I'm looking at my battery. I'll give you a moment to catch up too. There you go. So the next step is going to be to create a lerp node so that we can start blending these together. That you're going to get tired of using lerp nodes by the end of this week, but they are your friend. So we want to hold down L, place one, and let's see, which way does it have you put it in? Sorry, I'm just making sure I'm going to tell you it correctly. I guess it doesn't have us hook up the lerp yet, but we can still keep it there. We're going to kind of manipulate this a little bit to get it a little bit more interesting looking. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another texture sample down here with that macro variation. And the macro variation you're going to find when you kind of do this kind of blending stuff is going to be a really helpful texture. Where did that go? This one. To get a lot of like that organic sort of feel to it, where it looks random, but it still doesn't look like computer made or like machine made. It doesn't look too digital. So we got our texture set. Okay, we're going to then create a cheap contrast node. Into out of, let's see, sorry. Cheap contrast comes out of the R of that new one. And into it, we're going to feed a constant. I'm just going to hold 1 and click of 0.5. And this is going to kind of help. I'm sorry, cheap contrast. I'm just having a world of difficulty with words today. The cheap contrast will help it so that it's going to push the whites whiter and the darks darker. It does suggest a 0.5, but this is always something that you can kind of come in and play with on your own and see what kind of variation, you know, adjusting that, how it makes your stuff look different. This is where the lerp comes in, because we are going to put the rock marble polish D into the bottom one. And we're going to put the concrete poured into the top one. And, you know, another thing that you could always try is play around with, if you do flip-flop them, what does it look like? You might get completely different results. And then we're going to feed our cheap contrast into the alpha. And let's feed that lerp into the base color. So let's take a look at what it looks like over here real quick. And you can see that we're starting to get more variation built into this. In fact, let's do a little bit of an experiment, and let's kind of remember what it looks like this way. And let's flip-flop them and see if we like them better the other way, because we can always try to feed this one into B and this one into A. Honestly, kind of looks the same. It may be adjusted a little bit. I think this one has a little bit more of the light stuff, and I think I like that better, and less of that dark stuff. Like that bluish, and then this one. I think I like this way better, even though it is a subtle change. You can decide for yourself which way you prefer it. So we're going to add another little bit onto this, because we're starting to get some randomness in there. We're going to include a third texture into this to really kind of push that randomness. And the more that you add to it, the more random it becomes. But you always have to also judge, like, did you hit a point where you're pretty good to go and you don't really want to tweak things anymore? Like, the more that you tweak things, you're not really kind of getting any more benefit out of it. But let's add another thing in there, and we're going to learn a new node too that might be useful. So we're going to create a new controls in here mixed up. We're going to do another texture, so T and click. And the one we're going to do for this one is the T-Rock Sandstone D. Should be somewhere there. So we also need a texture coordinate off of this one. Rather than 20 by 20 though, I'm going to do a 15 by 15 just to kind of make it a little bit more asynchronous there. So the way we've been working with things to kind of get things as a grayscale is we've been kind of pulling it off of the R so that we can just get that grayscale off that red one. But there is another way to kind of get things with grayscale, and that is to use the desaturate node. So rather than trying to work with this one, with pulling it off the R, because there is a lot of data there, maybe we don't actually just want that R1. We want actually to take the whole image and desaturate it. If we pull off of RGB and type desaturation, we'll get a desaturation node. And the key to this, though, is that we do need to tell it how much we want to desaturate it. And we can do that with our friend, the constant. So I'm going to hold down 1 and click, feed it in. And I don't need it to be fully desaturated. Maybe I want to keep just a slight tint of that like reddish sort of sandstone color. So I'm going to desaturate just down to a 0.95. So it's going to take almost all of the color out, but just leave an ever so slight tint to it. Again, we need to work on getting this put into our big main line. So we're going to pull into it another texture sample of that macro variation. This one, though, we want to have a texture coordinate of 2. So that this will tile a little bit finer than the last one, because again, we're adding some variation to it. We're also going to rotate this one too, so we're not, we're going to introduce a little bit more chaos to it. And we're going to have to put that custom rotator node in between here. So is there a way to click on lines and like do an insert into like that path? Does anyone know?
Not really, but you both can
hold, you can grab the node connector.
But there'd be a way to click on it and then right click and then just do a custom rotator. And we're going to need a constant for our rotation angle, and we don't want to rotate it a crazy amount. We want to do about a 60-degree angle, so not a full 20, like 0.25. A 60-degree angle is going to be about a 0.167, but not too much. So next we're going to make another lerp so that we can start to feed all this in. Let me move this over here. So we're going to add a lerp here. We're going to feed this original one into A, this new one into B, and we're going to use this new one here to go as our alpha. So let me just plug it in there. Yeah. Then we can feed this into our base color. Look at that, isn't that neat? Let's apply and save. I know these nodes can be kind of weird to think about, but what we're doing, we could basically do the same thing in Photoshop. Like there's lots of correlations between this and Photoshop where, would it be helpful if I built it in Photoshop to kind of show you like how you would do it? I don't know if that'd be useful for anybody. Okay. But look at that interesting concrete now. And that is the end of the semi-procedural. We're not going to get into the baking. We're not going to get into the distance-based texture blending. Again, interesting stuff. If you are interested in materials, I would suggest kind of working right through those to get some extra stuff in.